Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today, we're looking at what might be the ultimate stress test for the human mind.
Hmm.
We're looking at what happens when a worldview that's built entirely on hard data, on empirical evidence, and a really strict rejection of the divine
Hmm.
crashes headfirst, literally, into the unexplainable.
And we are talking about the case of Nancy Ryan.
Exactly. And this isn't just another ghost story. Nancy was a materialist scientist, a technical writer for the Department of Energy, and a devout atheist who was absolutely certain that death was just a power down sequence.
Just a click.
Yeah.
Black.
Edifile.
Right. And that's the baseline you have to understand. Nancy lived her life by the scientific method. If you couldn't measure it or weigh it or, peer review
It
it,
just didn't exist.
it didn't exist.
Yeah.
To her, the idea of a soul wasn't just unproven. It was a logical fallacy.
Until she died. And she didn't just die. She experienced a reality that her brain was intellectually incapable of accepting, yet, well, there she was. So we're going to break down the transcript of her near-death experience, her NDE. But our mission today isn't just to recount the story. We want to understand the mechanics of that shift, from rigid skepticism to spirituality.
How does a brain that's wired for atheism even begin to process a reality made of unconditional love?
Right. And more importantly, what are the specific actionable insights she brought back about how we navigate our own lives?
It is a fascinating case study in cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
We get to watch a scientist try to debug the afterlife while she's actually standing in it.
Debug the afterlife. I like that.
And it forces you to ask, is atheism a conclusion based on evidence, or is it, sometimes a defense mechanism against a world that feels completely chaotic?
That is a huge question.
Right.
So let's establish the control group here. Who is Nancy before the data set changed? Because looking at her biography, she wasn't, born a cynic, was she?
No, not at all. And that's a crucial detail to really understand her whole trajectory. Growing up on a farm near Chicago, she actually started as what she calls a weird kid. She had this innate, almost hypersensitive connection to nature. She describes looking at trees and just feeling a divine presence vibrating in everything. She was deeply spiritual by default.
She felt spirit all around her.
All around her.
Which is pretty common, right? Kids often have that sort of magical thinking or openness. But usually the world just beats that out of you slowly.
Right, a slow fade.
But for Nancy, it sounds like it wasn't a fade, it was a clean break.
It was a distinct rupture. So she was raised Catholic, but in her mid-teens, around 15 or 16, the huge priest abuse scandals in Chicago started to dominate the news.
Oh, worry.
And remember, she's got this analytical mind that's developing. So she looks at the data points. Point A, an all-loving God exists. Point B, his supposed representatives are committing these horrific atrocities against children.
And the equation just doesn't balance.
It has a balance, exactly. She applied a binary logical framework to it. If these things are happening, then God simply cannot exist.
So it wasn't just teenage rebellion, it was a moral and logical deduction for her.
Absolutely. She decided her childhood feelings were just, an act of imagination. She shut the door on the spiritual and locked it tight.
And she didn't just lock it, she barricaded it with degrees. She went into geology, scientific writing.
Editing complex data for the government.
Right. By the time she's 46, living in Boulder, Colorado, she is the archetype of the rational materialist. But looking at the source material, despite all that success, she wasn't exactly happy, was she?
No, not at all. The machine was running, but the operator was miserable. She was divorced, totally dissatisfied with her career at the Department of Energy, and just feeling stagnant.
She was actually planning a move, wasn't she?
Yeah, to Denver. Thinking a change of scenery would fix this internal glitch. She was looking for a shift, completely unaware that the universe was about to give her one she had no control over.
Okay, let's talk about the crash. The details are visceral, but I want to focus on just how random it was. It's the day after Christmas. She's biking to the library.
So mundane.
Totally low stakes. It's the kind of afternoon where you just don't expect your life to end.
Not at all. She enters a traffic circle. The bike lane vanishes, which is a dangerous design flaw in itself.
Yeah.
So she's already hyper-aware. She sees an SUV entering the circle. It looks like it's slowing down.
Okay.
But the driver isn't looking at the road. She's looking down at her phone, texting.
Something we see every single day. But this time, the driver accelerates.
And Nancy does this thing that's so human and so futile. She puts her hand out like a stop gesture is going to do anything against 2 tons of moving steel.
Right.
The SUV hits her. She flips onto the hood, and she describes pounding on the windshield, screaming, making eye contact with the driver. but the driver is so engrossed in her phone.
She doesn't even see the woman dying on her car. That is just a
Ugh.
terrifying image of modern isolation.
It gets worse. Nancy slips off the hood because it's slick. She hits the pavement, cracks her helmet, but her backpack straps, they get snagged on the undercarriage.
Oh, no.
She realizes she's being dragged. She literally grabs the rear axle to keep her body from being sucked under the wheels. She was dragged 60 feet.
60 feet, that's what? The length of a bowling lane.
It's an eternity when your body is grinding against asphalt. The only reason she's even alive is that a truck driver behind them saw what was happening, realized the SUV wasn't stopping, and drove the wrong way around the circle to physically block the car.
So that truck driver is a hero. But the damage to Nancy, I mean, looking at the medical report, it's a miracle she wasn't paralyzed.
It's extensive. Collapsed lung, 5 broken ribs, cracked collarbone, severe head trauma. But the spine was the catastrophe. The doctors told her, essentially every process in your back is cracked or shattered.
So she's looking at massive reconstructive surgery.
Titanium rods just to hold her skeleton together, yeah.
Now, this is the pivotal moment. She's in the hospital pre-surgery. She's in agony. But the transcript says her primary emotion wasn't the pain. It was terror. Why?
Because of her worldview. This is where her atheism becomes a tangible, terrifying factor.
Right.
She believed that if she died on that table, it was total annihilation.
Non-existence.
Total non-existence. She describes this paralyzing fear of the void. She wasn't afraid of hell or judgment. She was afraid of the off switch. The idea of just ceasing to be.
So the anesthesiologist pushes the plunder. She's expecting the fade to black, the end of the Nancy Ryan program.
Which she'd felt before in other surgeries, that kind of chemical nothingness. But this time, the chemicals hit, and instead of fading out, she snaps on. She becomes, in her own words, more awake than she had ever been in her physical body.
And she's not in the recovery room? She's not in the void?
No. She opens her eyes, and she is standing in a hillside meadow. It's vibrant, like high definition. There are mountains in the distance. And the first thing that hits her isn't the view. It's the physics of the place.
The physics.
Yeah, she feels this wave of heat and peace, like standing next to a roaring fire. But the heat is pure, unconditional love.
Okay, I want to pause here, because this is usually where the skeptic says oxygen deprivation, DMT release, the brain is just hallucinating. But Nancy is the skeptic, so how does her brain handle this contradiction?
That's my favorite part of this whole case. She doesn't just accept it. She enters what you could call an analytical crisis. She's standing in heaven, but her internal monologue is running a diagnostic checklist.
Right.
She's thinking, point 1, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in this, so why am I here? Point 2, my parents told me atheists go to hell. This feels amazing, therefore, this is not hell.
She's trying to debug the afterlife using logic. This data does not fit my hypothesis.
Precisely. She's confused. She's looking for the glitch in the system. And that's when she gets an answer. Not from a burning bush, but as a telepathic download from the atmosphere itself. A thought just enters her mind. This is your home. You are a part of us. Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
That's the phrase that broke her.
It shattered that intellectual barrier. In that moment, she realized that the 46 years she spent on Earth, the job, the taxes, the divorce, that was the simulation.
That was the temporary state.
Yes.
Yeah.
This place, this connection, this was the baseline reality. It just dissolved her atheism instantly, not through argument, but through pure immersion.
So she accepts she's dead. She feels the love. And then a figure appears. A woman. Is this like an angel?
Nancy calls her the guide. And the description is very specific. She's ephemeral. Her face is never quite visible. This wasn't a figure demanding worship.
It was a teacher.
A teacher, a mentor. And the first thing the guide says is basically, you have work to do, you need to go back.
And Nancy, true to her personality, just says no.
She flat out refuses. She's arguing with the spirit guide. She says, I am not going back to that broken body. And really, can you blame her?
No. Why leave a place of total love to go back to a body held together by titanium rods and, immense pain?
But the guide has a trump card. And this introduces probably the most challenging concept in this whole deep dive, the pre-birth plan.
Right.
The guide essentially tells her, you can't refuse because you signed the contract. A screen materializes in the air like a movie screen. And Nancy sees a scene from before she was born.
And she sees herself.
She sees herself planning her own life, choosing the challenges.
Wait a second. She chose the crash. She chose the divorce. That is a very difficult pill for most people to swallow.
It is. The implication is that she chose the trajectory and the major hurdles. This completely reframes human suffering. It moves it from victimhood, bad things happening to you, to curriculum, challenges you design for yourself.
So from the soul's perspective, a tragedy is actually a lesson plan.
That's the idea. And Nancy realizes that the environment she's in, the meadow, the mountains, was a holding place,
A classroom.
a classroom customized for her psychology. Behind her was a gray fog, representing the unknown she was so afraid of. In front of her was nature, which she loved. The afterlife had a user interface design specifically tailored to calm Nancy Ryan.
That is wild. Customized UX for the soul. So what was the lesson? She said she was flatlined for maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like months of schooling.
The first big lesson came from something called the compass rose. She stood on this giant nautical chart of her life, and she could see every decision she ever made and every path she could have taken.
Like a multiverse map.
Sort of a probability map. And she saw that all the paths eventually led to the same destination. There wasn't one wrong turn that ruined everything.
Okay.
But the key insight was where the compass was centered. Nancy had spent her whole life centering her navigation in her head logic data analysis. The guide showed her that the compass belongs in the heart.
For a scientist, that must sound almost offensive. Follow your heart is the ultimate cliche.
It sounds cliche until you see it as a system optimization. The guide wasn't saying be emotional. The guide was saying the heart is a more sophisticated processing unit for spiritual navigation than the linear brain.
She was trying to solve a quantum problem with a calculator.
Exactly. She had a massive blind spot. She'd ignored intuition, viewing it as irrational, when the guide showed her it was actually her direct connection to divine intelligence.
Okay, so she's learning about navigation. Then comes the life review. Now, I've heard of this concept, your life flashes before your eyes. But Nancy's description is different. It's not a movie. It's more like a simulation.
It's empathy physics.
Yeah.
The guide takes her to a mountain pond. She touches the water and ripples expand. Each ripple is a moment from her life. When she focuses on one, she doesn't just watch it, she re-enters it. But, and this is the crucial part, she experiences it from the other person's perspective.
Okay, give us the examples. Because the two she mentions are so different.
So first, a positive one. She did a small kindness for someone years ago. In the review, she didn't feel her own satisfaction. She felt the other person's spirit lift. She physically felt the buoyancy she caused. And she saw the downstream effects. That person then went on to be kind to someone else.
A ripple effect of kindness.
A chain reaction of energy.
Yeah.
And then the negative one.
The fight with her sister.
Yeah, a fight with her younger sister when they were teenagers. Nancy was annoyed and said something really cutting just to win the argument, to get her to leave the room. Standard sibling stuff.
Sure.
But in the pond, she felt the visceral, crushing pain she inflicted on her sister. She felt the heartbreak.
That is terrifying. It's instant internal karma.
It was her biggest paradigm shift.
Yeah.
As a materialist, she thought words were just sound waves. In the life review, she realized every interaction is an energy transfer. You are literally impressing your will onto another being's energy field.
So she realized she couldn't go back to living on autopilot.
Because in a very real, physics-based sense, she is the other person.
So she's absorbing all of this. She's enjoying the view. And then the guide says, okay, recess is over. You have to go back.
And Nancy tries to run. She actually thought, if I just sprint around this woman, maybe I can stay in the meadow.
You can't outrun a spirit guide.
Apparently not. The guide just reached out, touched Nancy's broken ribs and sternum, healed her energy body, and swoosh, sent her back.
And the re-entry was violent? She doesn't wake up grateful to be alive. She wakes up screaming.
She's furious. She's in the recovery room, yelling at the nurses to bring back the woman from surgery. The staff is terrified. They think she's having a psychotic break.
She's shouting, send me back. I don't want to be here.
It's funny. She says she eventually shut up because her rational mind rebooted and told her, Nancy, stop talking. They're going to put you in the psych ward.
Which was a valid concern. She's a government scientist with a reputation.
Totally. But the next morning, a hospital chaplain came in. And this is why they are unsung heroes. Instead of dismissing her, the chaplain just listened and validated her. She told Nancy, you had a near-death experience. It's real. You are not crazy.
That validation was the bridge she needed. But then came the hard part. Reintegration. She's back in a broken body, facing a painful recovery, and her entire belief system has just been vaporized.
She had a serious choice to make. She could have suppressed it, told herself it was a hallucination, kept her job, kept her status, gone back to that safe, predictable life.
Or embrace this new path.
She chose the path.
Yeah.
And the physical results were Well, they were shocking.
Tell us.
Because of the spine damage, she was expected to be in a full-body cast for 16 weeks.
Correct.
She's walking out of the hospital in 4.
4 weeks.
4 weeks. The implication is that the energetic healing the guide performed on her light body actually catalyzed the healing of her physical body.
Wow.
But the internal healing was even more profound. She started meditating in nature. She practiced deep gratitude. And I don't mean just, writing in a journal. I mean feeling visceral, tear-inducing gratitude just for the mechanics of her legs moving.
She mentions she stopped living on autopilot. What does she mean by that specifically?
She stopped reacting out of fear. Before the crash, her whole operating system was fear of death, fear of failure, fear of judgment. After the NDE, she operated from a place of knowing.
She knew what was waiting for her.
She knew the peace that was waiting. So the drama of Earth office politics, status, money, it just didn't have hooks in her anymore. The anxiety that fuels so much of our modern life just evaporated.
She has this great phrase for it. She calls life on Earth a near-life experience.
I love that inversion.
Uh-huh.
We think this is life and that is death. Nancy argues that the spiritual realm is real life because it's permanent, it's connected, it's love-based.
And Earth is the near life.
It's a temporary, difficult simulation we enter to learn things we simply cannot learn in a place of perfection.
That's a key point. What can't you learn in a place of unconditional love?
Resilience, forgiveness, courage. You can't learn to forgive someone if no one ever hurts you. You can't learn courage if you're never in danger. Nancy calls Earth a crucible. You come here specifically because it's hard. The friction is the point.
So the mission, if we accept Nancy's data, is to figure out how to maintain that high-frequency love while we're down here in the mud.
Exactly. It's easy to be loving in a meadow of light. The challenge is to be loving in a traffic circle when a texting driver runs you over. That is the advanced curriculum.
The clash between the divine and the daily grind.
That's it. It really changes how you look at a bad day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just bad luck, it's a pop quiz.
And for Nancy, the ultimate victory was just losing the fear of death. When you remove that fear, you stop living small. You stop making decisions based on what if I get hurt and start making them based on what did I come here to experience?
From a materialist scientist terrified of the void to a spiritual teacher who knows that death is just waking up, it's an incredible journey.
It really challenges us to reconsider the boundaries we draw between science and spirituality. Nancy kind of proves they might just be different languages for describing the same thing.
The data changed, and so did the conclusion.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If we take Nancy's experience seriously, it suggests that you aren't just a random biological accident floating on a rock. You are a student in a very specific, very immersive classroom.
A classroom you likely designed yourself.
Which leads us to our final thought for you to chew on today. If Nancy is right, and our lives are indeed pre-planned classes we signed up for, how does that change the way you view your current biggest struggle? Whether it's a difficult boss, a failing relationship, or a health crisis, is it a punishment?
Or is it the exact lesson you came here to learn? And if you chose it, can you find the gratitude in it?
That's the deep dive. Thanks for listening to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.
See you next time.